Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Hour number 2, Hunt Palmer Show, presented by Gulf Coast Office Products, GCOPnet.com, GCOPnet.com. Denton Day in 30 minutes talking about college football as a whole this season. I'll talk about the LSU defense coming up in 15 minutes. They did something in the secondary that we thought was coming. We just didn't know in what variation. We'll talk about that coming up next. But we each week on Monday to start hour number 2, look at the Southeastern Conference against the number and see how we did. Beck, we had a conversation on Friday. You told me I had to go with the Costanza picks, make sure that we went with the opposite. I said, forget that. We're going to get smart, and we're going to get these right.
Yeah, I did say that, and you got most of them right.
I did, 4-2. And you know what that means? That means we are above 500. For the first time in a number of weeks, we are now on the season 33-32. We have not been over 500 since week 1. We went 9-6.
So here's my theory, though, on this week, and you went 4-2. We're back to over 500, which is great. However, I believe that if you had gone Costanza, you would have went 6-0 because because here's the thing, I don't think even going Costanza, I don't think you're taking UMass over Missouri. That's just ridiculous. UMass is one of the worst teams in FBS. Even as Costanza, you're not doing that.
It's at UMass on the road in Amherst. No,
you're still
in front of 17,000 crazies.
You're still going for Missouri on that one. And then Texas over Oklahoma, that's a toss-up. Maybe you take Oklahoma in that one. But the other ones, you're definitely taking Mississippi State over Georgia, 33.5 at Costanza. And you're definitely taking South Carolina over Alabama. Minus 21 there on the Costanza because South Carolina hasn't been very good, but for some reason they would just almost win that game.
The deal is we got home with Missouri minus 28, Texas minus 14.5, Florida catching 14.5, and then Vandy. We loved the doors there and got it done.
Anchor down, Hunt. I don't know how many times I have to say it. They're moving inside the top 8, I think.
Inside the top 8?
They're already 10, so they got to keep going up. I mean, that's a big win.
I don't know if it's a big win.
It's a big win, Hunt.
Let's talk about some of the action. I think where I want to start here is actually South Carolina and Alabama, because I think the interesting thing is not necessarily that South Carolina had a 2-point conversion to try to tie it there late or that they got the onside kick. The interesting thing is that Alabama has now been in absolute dogfights the last 3 weeks. And you beat Georgia at the end. You lost to Vanderbilt. And then you had a tight game at home against South Carolina. And I know that Matt's made a big bit out of this and is having a ton of fun with it, and I quite enjoy that. But the reality is, whether Alabama fans want to talk about this or not, is that the days of them showing up and just absolutely annihilating everybody by 40 points are over. Like, they got into fights with LSU and Auburn through the years, but they didn't have to worry about dealing with Arkansas. They didn't have to really concern themselves much with Tennessee. They just blew those teams out. They just crushed Vanderbilt and Missouri more often than not. Ole Miss and A&M. I realize that Ole Miss got them twice in the Freeze era. I know that A&M got them the one time in Kyle Field, and then Johnny Manziel got them. But we're talking about a decade worth of action, and 8 times out of 10, they're dusting all these people. Those days are just done. Like, Alabama's defense right now is just not that good. Georgia went up and down the field the entire second half. Vanderbilt went up and down the field the entire game. And South Carolina is terrible on offense. And they found a way to move the football. Lenora Sellers threw for 238.
They outgained Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, they won the yardstick. And they're just not very good on defense right now. And you realize that Saban always had the best talent and was an elite coach, no matter the era. And the issue is that Alabama now has to play the sport with us. This was the tweet out I sent out on Saturday. I said, Alabama fans, it's fine. We all do this every week. We all sweat it every single week. Y'all have been sitting back in a rocking chair from Labor Day through Christmas for 16 years. You might have lost one here or there, but who cares? You were getting to Atlanta. You were getting into the BCS championship game. You were getting into the playoff. And then you played your meaningful games that mattered against Clemson or Georgia or Ohio State when you got there. Well, now you got to play by our rules because Kalen DeBoer might be a damn good coach. The odds are he probably is, but he's not going to do what just happened for 16 years. And that doesn't necessarily play out when you beat Georgia in a close game, but in back-to-back weeks after that, when you play Vanderbilt and South Carolina, who were probably the two worst programs over the course of the last 40 years in the SEC, and you put those results out there, that's the new reality. And that's what Matt's been saying, and we alluded to it the day that Nick Saban retired, before we even knew who the coach was going to be. We said that. And that's the situation. That doesn't mean Bama is going to go 8-4 every year. It doesn't mean they're not going to make the playoff this year. But they're going to be in dogfights with a lot of teams, and that has never been the case for the last almost 2 decades. Rest of the league, Quinn Ewers comes back. Texas muzzles Oklahoma. Oklahoma's offense is not good, not mediocre, not bad. It's abysmal. It is absolutely abysmal. Trying to watch them attempt to move the football is brutal. They averaged 2.3 yards per carry against Texas, and then Michael Hawkins can't throw. 4.9 yards a reception. You can't complete anything down the field. You can't run the ball and you can't stretch the field. Well, that makes playing defense real easy. All I got to look at is 8 yards and in. Okay, let's go. They don't have game changers at running back. They don't have game changers in the receiving core. They're hurt there. Their best receiver's out. And Hawkins is not very good. And all the while, you're looking up at Eugene, Oregon, and your old quarterback is running all over the place on Ohio State and winning huge games. They made a mistake letting Dylan Gabriel go, and they're in some trouble right now. And that's a team that has some losses coming because that schedule is absolutely brutal, and they can't score. So you look at what they've got coming. They play South Carolina, who can really rush the passer and has got some good players on defense. They play at Ole Miss, who's not going to be in a good mood. You still got Missouri, who's not great, I get it, but you still got to play them on the road. You've still got Alabama, and you've still got LSU. I mean, it is reasonable to look at Oklahoma's schedule right now. They are a 4-2 football team and think that they are going to lose 3, 4, 5, 6 times this year, 6-6. That's a tough intro to the Southeastern Conference for a program that has won its conference half of the last 36 years. So nice win for Texas. I think they're as good as anybody. Oklahoma's got real significant problems. Tennessee beats Florida 23-17. Some issues from this game that I noticed. Tennessee shut out in the first half. I don't understand why their offense can't get up and get moving. It didn't look great against Oklahoma, and it didn't look great against Florida. It looked great against NC State, and you thought, okay, they figured it out with Nico. He just hasn't looked great. It certainly looked bad against Arkansas. So that's now really a month your offense has been in neutral. And Florida is not great on offense and allowed Tennessee to come back, take the lead, but then Florida scores that touchdown with 30 seconds left. And I'm sorry, Billy Napier, you need to go for 2. You've got a mobile quarterback. You're on the road. You're a lesser team. You got 3 yards to beat them and try to plant your flag in the ground and submit your job status, and you kick the extra point. That's trash. It's just trash. And I talked about this on the postgame show. I thought Brian Kelly's decision to go for 2 with Jaden Daniels as his quarterback against Alabama 2 years ago in 2022 was absolutely the right decision. And I also thought in the game on Saturday, it was the right decision to kick the extra point because you don't have a mobile quarterback and you can't run the ball and your completion percentage stinks and your defense is playing pretty good. And I realized that Florida had just gone down the field to score, so you feel okay about the way your offense played there and your defense has been pretty good all night. But hey, man, 3 yards. Like, you got to go get it. And you allowed yourself to get into an overtime situation and couldn't convert a field goal, and now you get beat with a touchdown. Poor coaching by Billy Napier. He's lost Graham Mertz for the year. That was reported earlier today, and I think you're looking at the end there for Billy Napier in Gainesville. Vanderbilt, we got to talk about it here at the end. Vanderbilt beats Kentucky 20-13 and really controlled this game throughout. It was more of the same from Kentucky on offense. For some reason, they got things clicking against Ole Miss. I'm not sure how, because I watched that Ole Miss defense in person over the weekend, and they are good. But Kentucky looked terrible on offense again, especially trying to throw the ball. And Vanderbilt kind of did what they do. They ran it 37 times and threw it 18. Diego Pavia ran it 14 times, more than any running back that they have. He kind of controlled things. He did throw his first interception of the year, but they controlled things on the ground, and they shortened the game and made Kentucky, which is a bad offense, try to score with limited possessions, and Kentucky couldn't do it. And Vanderbilt comes out of there with a win in a game that they control possession for 10 minutes more than Kentucky, and we know Kentucky is a possession team. So Vanderbilt's going to come into Tiger Stadium, and they're plucky. I just don't know if I love their ability to keep up with LSU. I know they did against Bama. I know they did. I don't know if I love them to do that, so I still like LSU in that game. But Vanderbilt certainly deserves a lot of credit, being 4-2, 2-1 in SEC play, wins over Alabama and Kentucky, and it's just another layer to this wild season in the SEC, where if you try to connect this big spider web of dots between Arkansas beating Tennessee and Vanderbilt beating Alabama and Kentucky beating Ole Miss and Vanderbilt beating Kentucky and Ole Miss annihilating South Carolina and South Carolina playing LSU close, and there's just a lot of
almost beating Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, it's week to week, and that's not generally been the case. And I don't know if this is portal related that makes it like the NFL. Because if you watch the NFL and you watch that noon window every week, you see that come 3:05, there's like 4 games going down to the wire that are 3-point games. That's the NFL, and it's usually not college. College has 19-point spreads. College has 56-14 a lot, and it's just not showing up a lot right now. And even when Vandy's involved, it's not showing up. Even when the elite teams in the league are involved. Mississippi State lost by 10 points at Georgia. I don't know what to make of it, but it's starting to feel like this era of constant change and players playing for some different reasons. Like maybe you're getting a more competitive product.
Yeah, and it's interesting because before or whenever NIL in the transfer portal first became a realization that it was going to be happening and we were going to have to just roll with it and see what happens with it, a lot of, myself included, a lot of people thought that this was going to actually widen the disparity because you're going to have the best players at these smaller schools.
It has in college baseball.
Yeah,
it's widened the things in college baseball. The SEC kicks everyone's butt every
single year, every single week. But and you thought that was going to happen in football and other sports too, because the best players from the smaller teams would transfer up to the bigger teams, and the smaller teams would just keep losing their best players, and the disparity would just grow stronger. But it's surprisingly not really gone that way so far. I mean, Diego Pavia maybe doesn't go to Vanderbilt if not for the transfer portal, and he's completely changed that team, their offense. They've been able to effectively shorten games and control the ball, and they've had a pretty solid to decent defense that's been able to make enough plays for them to win some games. And so, it's interesting, man. It's pretty surprising. Like I said, I didn't see it coming. I thought the disparity would even widen, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it's actually going the other way.
We'll see. LSU's defense did some really good things back on Saturday night. We'll talk about that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. EvolvePT.com is the website. Robbie Bolton, about 2 decades here in Baton Rouge as a licensed physical therapist. His team is fantastic, and they pride themselves on the hands-on nature of the rehabilitation there at Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. They do the soft tissue manipulation, dry needling, cupping, scraping, and they're going to get you back to feeling like your active self. They can monitor it with the isokinetic testing they can do. They can see how quickly and how continuously that strength is coming back, no matter where the injury is, knee, arm, shoulder, back, elbow, wherever your pain is and whatever was the source of that pain, you got to get rid of it to get back to being your active self. Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports can help you with that. They're happy to help you with the youth athlete. If there's been an injury in youth sports, if you're up in age and you're trying to get back on the golf course or to working out the way that you like to and you can't right now, Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports needs to be your place to go. They're on Starring near Highland Road. You can check them out online, EvolvePT.com. Tell Robbie Bolton and his team that you heard about it on the Hunt Palmer Show. It's Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports, EvolvePT.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
congratulations to Cecil Thomas from St. Francisville. Cecil is the Week 7 winner in our 2024 College Football Pick'em Contest and wins a Hooters wing party for 10 people. Don't forget to make your picks for round 8 by this Thursday at noon. Weekly winners will receive a Hooters wing party for 10 people, and the first place season-long champion will get a 75-inch 4K flat-screen TV and soundbar plus free Hooters wings for an entire year. It's the 2024 College Football Pick'em presented by Hooters.
Monday show is brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products, GCOPnet.com. Denton Day with us in about 12 minutes. Got a Pro Football Focus story up at LouisianaSports.net showing the 5 highest graded players and 5 lowest graded players for LSU in the game against Ole Miss. But the other piece to that article, something I want to talk about here, is the LSU secondary and specifically the safety rotations. We heard Brian Kelly say back after LSU played South Alabama that the rolling in 6 safeties was going to stop. And I told you last week, I was like, I believe him. I have no idea who the 2 or 3 he's going to settle on will be. I don't know if you're going with youth and talent. I don't know if you're going with veterans and experience. I don't know if it's some sort of blend. I don't know if it's game to game. I don't know if it's coverage guys you need or if it's guys that come down and play the run, tackling. Like I don't know what he's looking for. Well, it was pretty obvious because LSU's defense played 87 snaps in the game on Saturday night. 87 snaps. You look at the snap counts on Pro Football Reference. Sage Ryan played 86 of 87 snaps. He was off the field for 1 play. Furthermore, Jordan Gilbert played 85. He was off the field for 2 plays. You look at Major Burns in the star position. He played 84 snaps. He was off the field for 3 plays. Deshaun Spears, who we thought we might see a good amount of, 3 snaps. Kylan Jackson, freshman, 1 snap. Javian Toviano, the backup to Burns at star, 3 snaps. They went with the veteran players at safety in this game. Almost exclusively. Just a handful of snaps dispersed between Spears, Jackson, Toviano, those guys. They wanted the old guys on the field. And I thought LSU played okay. Yeah, you let the 50-yard run go from midfield. Looked like you had that stopped, and the momentum of Bentley stopped. He stopped, and then he bounces to the outside, and you had one guy try to make a tackle and couldn't do it. And he goes to 50 yards. But outside of that, I thought they were pretty good. You got a huge break early in the game, second snap, third snap, one of the two. And Trey Harris drops an 80-yard touchdown. I mean, right down the seam. Dart drops it right in the bucket. Most productive wide receiver in America just dropped it. You got a break there, no question. But I thought LSU's vets in the secondary did a pretty good job. At corner, you weren't rotating. Zy Alexander, 87 snaps of the 87. Every one, Zy Alexander was out there. On the other side, Ashton Stamps, 87 out of 87 snaps. He played the entire game. And Zy Alexander had the highest Pro Football Focus grade of any player on LSU's team. He graded out 88.6 for the game. His coverage was an 89. That is an astronomical grade. Grades in the 70s are not bad. Grades in the low 80s into the upper 80s, that's elite stuff. Nobody scores in the 90s. It's very, very rare. So for Zy Alexander to score an 89 on his coverage grade is impressive. And on the other side, you had Ashton Stamps. His coverage grade wasn't as good, 65.8, but he was good in a couple of pass rush snaps. And his defensive grade there at 67 was okay. But you went with a bunch of the older guys. Stamps is the exception to that. Is kind of a true sophomore. They decided that's what they were going to roll with. Now we'll see, because you're about to flip things. You went from facing a tempo team that has a veteran quarterback that can be pretty prolific on offense, that's going to throw the ball a good bit, to this coming week where you might face a really green quarterback, or Taylon Green at quarterback. That was an unintentional, awful pun. It'll either be Taylon Green or a green quarterback, meaning a young player. Thank you very much for that, Beck. Completely unintentional. But it's going to be a more physical running style that's not going to be as up-tempo. Does that mean you put some different guys out there? I don't know. We'll just have to see. But it was clear they had a plan on Saturday, and they stuck to it. I can't go too much further on the defense without talking about Whit Weeks and Braden Swinson. Whit Weeks has a career-high 18 tackles. He's named the SEC Defensive Player of the Week. Had a pass breakup, forced a fumble before the half, had a sack right there at the end of regulation, 2 TFLs. He was all over the field. He was incredible. And we know that Whit Weeks, to this point, a year and a half into his LSU career, we know he can show up and get you the highlight play. He's really fast, and he can hit. He plays with some aggression, and like he can make the highlight reel play. But he can also be out of position. And you saw in the South Carolina game, his run fit was bad, and Rocket Sanders off left end took it 70. And that's a play that Whit was in the wrong place, and that's something that you've got to clean up. And so Saturday, to me, was the most complete game he's ever played. He was in position. He didn't miss tackles. He made, in fact, a ton of tackles. And Pro Football Focus graded him out as an 84.3, which is awesome. His tackling grade was sensational at 87.2. That's a guy who's getting people on the ground. And then for Swinson, his pass rush grade was actually not as great at just 65. He did have 2 sacks, and he's got a chance now with 7 sacks through 6 games to break Arden Key's record of 12 sacks in a season at LSU. But his run blocking grade run defense grade was really good at 77.9, knocking on 80's door there. That was a really strong effort by Braden Swinson. Those 2 guys were excellent. The defensive play was quality, especially in the secondary with some of those older guys. And again, you didn't dominate Ole Miss. You didn't stuff the run. But you created some turnovers. You got big red zone stops. Ole Miss came up completely empty, 0 points in their first 2 red zone tries thanks to a missed field goal and then a stop 4th and 1. You got some big plays on 4th down. You forced some punts when you had to have it, and Ole Miss was going down there to take a 2-score lead. They're getting better. They're making progress. And that's, at this point, very evident. And Brian Kelly's teams have improved over the course of time since he's been here. The team that beat Alabama in 22 was significantly better than the team that lost to Florida State. And last year, LSU's offense toward the end of the year was way better than it was against Florida State. The defense never showed those marked improvements, but the offense did. And now you're seeing the defense do it this year. I feel like LSU's got a championship-level defensive staff. They got to keep recruiting and keep developing, but you're seeing some results right now. And I thought Saturday was very, very encouraging from that point of view. LSU wins it 29-26 inside Tiger Stadium. Monday show is brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products, GCOPnet.com. All your printing, scanning, copying needs. Find our friends at Gulf Coast Office Products. We'll step aside. Come back with Denton Dave, Sirius XM's college football overtime. We'll talk some national college football on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boudreaux's Electrical Services, boudreauxelectrical.com. Saw Justin Boudreaux on Friday at Lod Cook. Also saw him out there on campus getting ready for LSU and Ole Miss. His parents, Neil and Melissa, have been running things for 40 years down there in Napoleonville. If you are interested in a Generac home standby generator, there are places to get them. You have options. I'm telling you, you should choose Boudreaux's Electrical Services. Every Generac generator comes with a 7 to 10 year warranty. You got a full-time employee that's doing all the installation. They're going to do most of it underground with the highest quality in copper and tubing so that it's aesthetically pleasing and functional. And they're going to monitor it 24 hours a day. So if something happens, whether it's an issue with someone doing something to it or just mechanical failure, they'll know if there's an issue. They can send a tech out there to get it fixed so that when your power does fail, Boudreaux's Electrical's generator throws on and you are all set. Hopefully we're getting hurricane season into the rearview mirror. I'd really like that, but you know that another one's always coming. Give yourself the peace of mind of knowing you're not going to lose power. Boudreaux's Electrical Services. You can call them at 985-397-1562, 985-397-1562, or in the 225 at 300-9389. BoudreauxElectrical.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
your work week is off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Our Monday show is brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. This time on Mondays, we always head out to the Jim's Firearms Hotline, chat with our guy Denton Day, college football overtime on Sirius XM. He joins us now. Denton, how we doing?
Hunt, I'm well. Not as well as you guys are. A heck of a win for LSU late this weekend. How about that?
I would push back. I think you're pretty good. That was a heck of a day in college football. We got our little slice of heaven for the nightcap, but it was great from start to finish. No.
No, it was spectacular. I mean, from that early window where you had South Carolina pushing Alabama, which, I mean, I'm not saying Lenore's Sellers missed that because he didn't have rec specs on. I'm just saying he wasn't wearing rec specs and he missed the throw. You know what I mean? So, and then you got to the mid window, which was all right. You got Tennessee and Florida, which was really fun down the wire. But that late window was everything that we hoped it was going to be between Ole Miss and LSU, and then the Ohio State-Oregon game. It lived up to the hype, which is tough to do because it was the most hyped weekend that we've had this year, but it lived up to it for sure.
Let's talk big picture here before we get into specific games. I'm looking at Vanderbilt beating Alabama and South Carolina hanging with them. I'm looking at Mississippi State hanging around in the first half with Texas and with Georgia for a little bit. Arkansas beats Tennessee. Florida's hanging with Tennessee. Tennessee goes to Oklahoma and wins. South Carolina either gets dominated by Ole Miss or is tight with LSU or beats Kentucky. Like, it's just, there's more parity than I can remember. Do you have a good explanation for that?
I wish I did. I mean, I think you can maybe, if you have like an agenda to push, it's transfer portal or NIL or balancing the field. But what I think it really comes down to, Hunt, is there's not a lot of exceptional quarterbacks. And when you don't have an exceptional quarterback, it feels like you end up being a little bit more vulnerable. And there's good quarterbacks, certainly. I think Quinn Ewers, good quarterback. I would say he might even be a great quarterback. Jalen Milroe is a fine quarterback that has his moments, but like that, I mean, he's a great example because he makes some mistakes that traditionally we are not used to seeing Alabama quarterbacks make. And because the rest of their team isn't iconically strong, you say the same thing about Georgia. Like Carson Beck, good quarterback, makes some mistakes, but they don't have this iconic defense that they've had in years past. I think it allows for a little bit more of a level playing field. And then I love Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt because I don't think he knows that they're not supposed to be good. And that's so much fun. Like he just has this, it's almost arrogance in the best way possible that we're going to push anybody no matter what kind of game we're going to play in. So I think that it really just comes down to, if you look across the conference, you can even expand this a little further to the country, there's not a lot of exceptional quarterbacks, which means everybody is capable of losing on any given week.
I made the comment to my friends that I think Nussmeier might be the quarterback I took second in a draft of SEC quarterbacks for college football purposes. I think Ewers is probably first, but like I think I could make an argument for Nussmeier second in this league. Is that a fair statement to make?
I would agree with that statement. I think 2 weeks ago, actually, how about 3 weeks ago, not 2 weeks ago, but 3 weeks ago, people would have argued for Jackson Dart when they were just looking at the non-con, and then you start to play SEC teams, and all of a sudden, this dude who was putting up massive numbers that landed him on graphics with Mac Jones and Joe Burrow, he is much more human. So I think Nussmeier is definitely the second pick. Let me just real quickly make sure I'm not forgetting anybody.
I mean, it's a discussion. It's like Carson Beck, Jackson Dart. Like, I don't think anybody's taken Brady Cook at this point. I don't think anybody's taken Nico. Like, I'm looking around. Wigman's been up and down. I mean, Lagway. I look at it and I'm kind of. I mean, Pavia. I think there's a real case to be made there. And Milroe is the one that I'm not talking about. But I'm pretty comfortable with the guy LSU's got taking snaps.
Yeah, I would be too. You know, Jalen Milroe is such a fascinating case because he makes big plays when you need him to make a big play, but he also, I mean, some of the plays that he made against South Carolina were just like, he should be past that, especially working with a guy like Kalen DeBoer. We know his pedigree. And at this point, like, I know there's some Alabama fans, I'm sure, that are blaming Kalen DeBoer for the lack of success of Jalen Milroe. I think we've seen enough with DeBoer and the way that he runs offenses, the way that he helps quarterbacks, to point at Milroe and say this is more on him. He needs to get better in terms of processing and decision making, and he's not there. So I definitely say that Nussmeier's 2 in the SEC behind Quinn Ewers at 1.
Bigger win for LSU or loss for Ole Miss on Saturday?
Oh, much bigger loss for Ole Miss,
yeah.
Which is not to take away the win for LSU, but I have 2 losses and it's mid-October. And you were supposed to be one of the teams with Penn State, and Penn State is actually benefiting from this in the expanded college football playoff to where, all right, you have a little bit of breathing room. That doesn't mean you turn around and lose to Kentucky early and then drop your second game of the season in early to mid-October with, some of the teams that Ole Miss is going to have to play against, like, assuming they don't go perfect, which is based off of what we've seen. They're not going to go perfect. I don't think that Lane Kiffin is on the hot seat per se, but this is certainly not what they expected when all of the changes that struck college football this year took place.
What do we make of Alabama being in a dogfight with South Carolina after losing to Vanderbilt? Is it just quarterback play, or is there more to this?
It's quarterback play, and I don't think their defense is as strong as we are accustomed to seeing in Alabama defense. I think a lot of it is the Jalen Milroe effect, but there are guys that just seem to be a little lost and a little out of place on defense. And, South Carolina might be better than people give them credit for, but they're not awesome. And the fact that they had some issues with South Carolina and they had lost to Vanderbilt and allowed Vanderbilt to give up 40, and the week prior they had blown a 28-0 lead to Georgia. I mean, we loved that game because we're fans, and it was just a great football game. But from the perspective of Alabama, you guys were up 28-0, and it was a ball game towards the end of it. That shouldn't happen. So defensively, they're lacking a little bit. Not just Jalen Milroe, but it is mostly Jalen Milroe.
All right, let's go to the Big Ten. Ohio State and Oregon, just a classic. The Ducks get a signature win there for Dan Lanning. What'd you think?
I loved the win for Dan Lanning. I thought you finally saw some of his, I call it creative aggressiveness, but you saw that creative aggressiveness finally amount to something and amount to a big win. I would really challenge teams in any conference to pay attention to what goes on outside of your conference. Will Howard has to know you have to throw it on that final play. You cannot
know what he's doing.
Cannot slide. I mean, a week after Nico Y struck out looking against Arkansas, Will Howard strikes out looking against Oregon. You just have to have more situational awareness of what's going on. So I was really bummed for Will Howard how that played out, but a massive win for Dan Lanning and Oregon. This gives him confidence, and that's nobody in the Big Ten wants to see Oregon with confidence.
All right, let's go to the other one. Weirdly, in the Big Ten, out in the Coliseum, Penn State gets way behind, and they scrap all the way back and win it in overtime, 33-30. We know the MO for Penn State and what they've been. They beat the teams that aren't very good, and they lose to the really good ones. I don't know what USC is at this point. They're 3-3, but it's probably a big win for James Franklin.
Massive win for James Franklin. Also massive for those of us that had USC covering 4. Eventually, there was a field goal that ended not a touchdown in overtime. But this was Drew Aller. I thought this was his best game as a college quarterback. The throws that he made in a clutch moment was massive. And Tyler Warren was awesome. He was the best athlete on the field in that ball game. But the throws that Drew Aller was able to make in those spots was really, really impressive. And I'm with you. I don't really know what USC is. I was down on them. I had them under 7.5 wins, and that's starting to get a little bit more validated as the season progresses, as they lose some of these winnable games. But I think if you're Penn State, you just take it for what it is. Our quarterback made some big-time throws when people criticized him for not being able to do so, and we escaped with a win going all the way across the country, which is now normal in college football, but still a little weird. I think it was a very good weekend for Penn State.
Do we think BYU is the class of the Big 12? I realize that they beat up on an Arizona team that's not great, but they're 6-0.
I would say for now, yes, but I don't know if there's a conference that I distrust more than the Big 12, just knowing that we used to have Pac-12 after dark, right? Well, now that the Pac-12 is extinct, at least for a year, it's going to become Big 12 after dark. I don't know who it's going to be, but there's going to be someone on BYU's schedule that maybe a lot of us don't anticipate to push them that's going to end up pushing them. So I think they're in a good spot right now, but eventually there's going to be this weird game late where they might end up letting one slip through their fingers here. But I definitely think that they are the best team that we've seen so far in the Big 12 because, Lord knows what's happening to Utah. We finally got Cam Rising back, and it was not pretty at all.
No, it wasn't. Let's look at the week to come. The SEC kind of taking the headlines with two big matchups in the top 15. Alabama headed to Neyland Stadium in Knoxville, tied our 2.5-point favorite there. I don't know what to make of this one. What you got?
I wish this game happened like 2 weeks earlier when we still were of the belief that Tennessee's offense was good. because right now I don't look at them as being all that impressive. Yeah, I think they were this is impressive, but they were on like a 4-week pump fake, convincing us that they were really, really good on that side of the football when they really just weren't. So I think it could be a wacky game, which could be fun for those that don't have a dog in the fight. But I don't anticipate that it's going to be a classic the way that we might have looked at it, Bama, Georgia, or Oregon and Ohio State, or Ole Miss and LSU. I don't think it's going to be that kind of game. I think it's going to be sloppy with a lot of points, but maybe not the most enjoyable watch if you're a big fundamentalist.
I have a good sense that it's going to be a pretty good one in Austin, Texas. I think Georgia will be ready to play in that game. I don't know if they'll win, but I think they'll be ready to play in that game. Georgia at Texas, 6:30 on ABC. Texas, 3.5-point choice in that one. How do you see it?
I like Texas in this one. I do agree with you that it's going to be a fun one. This should be the classic of the weekend. I thought it was really, really smart and really important that Quinn Ewers played this weekend. If you were just going to throw him out after a 3-week hiatus against Georgia, that's a tough ask. But doing it against Oklahoma, knowing that Oklahoma's defense is a damn good defense, but you have the luxury of them not having a quarterback, so it gives you a little bit of time to shake off the rust, which ended up working for Texas. I think you're going to see Quinn Ewers at his best, and this might be the defining game of his career in college. He's played some good ones, but this might be the one, knowing everything that's at stake here, and it might supplement or supplant Texas as the team to beat in the SEC. When coming into the season, everybody thought it was going to be Georgia.
Georgia loses this football game, a spot in Atlanta kind of opens up. That'd be their second conference loss, and all of a sudden you can kind of sneak around them, which hasn't been the case for 3 years here in the Southeastern Conference. So we'll see how that goes. Last one here, Denton. Appreciate your time. Hangover spot for LSU at Arkansas. Tigers are 3-point favorites up there. Is there a bit of concern with that?
Maybe a little bit of concern because Arkansas is in the same spot as Vanderbilt, where sometimes they're a little too good for their own doing. But I think LSU coming off that big win, I think Brian Kelly's going to have the guys all right. And you just mentioned, like, if Georgia loses this weekend, there's a spot available in an SEC championship game. Still a lot of season left, but LSU's in a really good striking spot as long as they can take it week by week and not allow themselves to fall into any traps.
We'll see. This is a big one, but it's obvious to everyone, so we'll see if the Tigers do respond. Either way, Denton will be talking about it on SiriusXM after they all go final on college football overtime coming up on Saturdays with us every single Monday. Thanks, man.
I appreciate it as always, man.
Let's come back and close out hour number 2 in a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. I always talk about commercial property and casualty insurance because that's kind of the bread and butter there at the Highland Insurance Group. But they also are fantastic with your group and employee benefits. If you're a business owner, you understand how important the benefits part of running that business is. It's great to attract people with great benefits. It's also great to keep people with great benefits, and there's an expense involved in all those insurance costs, and you want to make sure that those are being managed properly. And I can promise you the Highland Insurance Group will do that. They do it all day, every day, and are happy to help you with that. Talk about property and casualty as well. Hurricane season hopefully winding down here. We'll see. But it's not just hurricane season where you need property and casualty insurance and you need to make sure that everything's in place. Car accidents happen. Cyber breaches happen. Employee lawsuits, unfortunately, they happen. You want to make sure that you're covered all across the board, and the folks at the Highland Insurance Group will help you do that. Check them out online at HighlandIG.com. Give Jonathan Carbo and his team a call. They're right here in Baton Rouge, but they can help you out statewide, no matter where you are listening to us here in Baton Rouge. They're online at HighlandIG.com. It's the Highland Insurance Group.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Hockey is back in Baton Rouge. The Baton Rouge Zydeco opened the 2024-25 season against the Biloxi Seawolves Thursday, October 17th. That's this Thursday, October 17th at the Raising Cane's River Center. Register at 1045ESPN.com for your chance to win tickets to opening weekend. For more information or to purchase tickets, visit RaisingCanesRiverCenter.com.
So, got a question here. I want both of you to weigh in.
Okay.
Because we got Will Campbell coming down the hill once again in just a preposterous suit. Ryan Clark is on ESPN right now. He's kind of got it working. We're talking about suits that have like a lot of different colors, not like a pattern. It's like the suit's green over here and blue over here and like big, bold color transitions. Do we think they're like out in front of this, or this is just too much?
I think it's too much. I think it seems like the last maybe 5 years, the sports like intro for players in all sports, so the guys walking in to the arena or to like for LSU walking down Victory Hill with these crazy suits. I think Cam Newton and Russell Westbrook are to blame here. But unfortunately, it seems like that's just become the norm of just wearing something that's so outlandish that you're going to get noticed.
Cassie, are we thinking that the bold fashion choices are where you need to be, or do guys need to rein it in a little bit?
No, I think it's a little too much.
Okay. I mean, I tend to agree. Again, Jake from State Farm, I'm wearing khakis and a golf shirt every day, so what are we going to do? But, I mean, look, I'm looking at Orlovsky. He's got the classic going. Marcus Spears is on there. He's got the classic going. And RC's got a lot going on.
There's nothing wrong with wearing something unique or something that's, different than just a regular, like, Navy, suit or something like that. But let's just try not to get not too crazy. Like, just something that's interesting or, different, but doesn't have to be just absurd. That's the way I look at it.
Let's play Take It or Leave It.
All right, first one here. The LSU men's basketball team was ranked 51st overall and 12th in the SEC in the first edition of the Kim Palm ratings, usually one of the more well-regarded, regarded rankings for college basketball. And they were also picked 14th, finished 14th in the league in the SEC media poll. Take it or leave it.
I'll leave it. I mean, look, I would not rule out LSU finishing 14th under any circumstance. I think they're better than that. I think they're closer to 11th.
Yeah.
And if you're 11th, you're knocking on the door of 9 or 10. They got 8 into the tournament last year with Oklahoma and Texas. You think 10's an opportunity. I think they're right on the precipice. I don't think they're a top 5 team in the league, obviously. Bama was ranked 2nd in this poll. But I think they're right in the middle of the league, which is right in the middle of the bubble. It just depends kind of on what they do in the last 4 minutes of all these tight SEC games I think they're going to play. So I think it's fair. I don't think it's laughable or unreasonable, but I hope it's a little bit better than that.
Yeah, 14th may be a little bit much in my opinion, but that could be the floor. I could see that for the season. But moving on here, Philadelphia 76ers center Joel Embiid in a recent interview with ESPN's Tim Bontemps said about playing in back-to-backs, if I had to guess, I would probably never play back-to-backs the rest of my career. Take it or leave it.
I'll probably leave that. I think it's possible to play back-to-back.
Yeah, I think so.
I think at some point in the rest of his career, he'll do it at least once. But you know my stance on this. Like, if the Philadelphia 76ers think the best thing to do for them to win a championship is for Joel Embiid to play 75% of the season, then he should play 75% of the season. I know the implications that fans pay to go to the games, fans pay to watch on TV, commercials pay for those eyeballs. Like, I got all that. I got it all. But in my estimation, if you're in an NBA basketball team, you should not be running the basketball team to try to maximize ad revenue. You should be trying to win the championship.
Yeah.
That'll take care of your ad revenue. And if they think that's what's best for Joel Embiid, then do it. Fine. If he needs to take a week off, he can. Whatever.
Yeah. If the NBA, if Adam Silver, if they don't want this to happen, then you have to put levy penalties on teams for doing these things. But at the end of the day, the team's going to do its best for the team, and if it's that's what they think it is, then that's what they're going to do. Next one here, AT&T Stadium, of course, the Cowboys' home. Their X account tweeted a picture from inside the stadium last night with a graphic about how many fans were there, 93,644. That's a good number. But the photo was from inside. You could obviously see the giant scoreboard, the giant video board, but they blurred out the score on the giant Jumbotron, blurring out the score when you're getting blown out. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to leave that. If we were doing it so people wouldn't immediately jump on the scoreboard and make comments, then we have to leave it. If we were doing it as some sort of a joke, like, hey, we know the score's bad, let's just not look at it, fine. It's a matter of context. I probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But next one today is a must-win for the Mets in L.A. Take it or leave it.
I'll leave it. Look, they've got Minaya going. He's been good for them, and you can come back from 2-0 down, but you really don't want to go down 2-0 because then you get back home and you have to win Game 3, and that's just an uncomfortable way to go play a baseball game. The Mets have been incredible. They're never say die. They've been down in the count late in the ninth, and they've figured things out. But they would really do themselves a favor to go ahead and win. They got destroyed last night. So we'll see that game coming up. in 12 minutes on Fox. Yankees and Guardians tonight from Yankee Stadium. Carlos Rodon will be on the mound against Alex Cobb for Cleveland. So that's it for Take It or Leave It. That's it for our Monday shows. Brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. If you missed any of it, catch it on demand. 1045ESPN.com's on demand tab. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound. You can find us as well as on YouTube. 30 minutes to start the show on LSU. We also touched on the New Orleans Saints. You can find those at Hunt on Saints or Hunt on LSU on YouTube. Thanks to Denton Day for wrapping things up in college football. We'll step aside. Matt's going to drive you home on After Further View. We're back same time, same place tomorrow on The Hunt Palmer Show.